you guys. How have you been? I haven't been on in a minute, and I'm just here to check in and let you know that everybody who has supported me in my time away, whether that was a purchase on my shop, left me a kind note, a comment, whatever it was, an email, I so appreciate that. It does make a difference, and thank you for doing that. Today I'm checking in to kind of let you know like what's been going on with me, where my head's at, my latest diagnosis, and a few other things, like what it's been like sort of working through these issues and this trauma therapy that I'm doing. And I'm going to try to touch briefly on each one so that this video isn't forever long. Okay, so let's start with the diagnosis, because most people probably want to know that. And the diagnosis is, I decided when my business was suffering, when my business was basically failing, it was failing to produce enough income to really be considered a business. I had to kind of make the choice, what do I want to do? Do I want to try to get a part-time job? Do I want to work on my mental health? Do I want to close the business, give up on the business? Just what is going on? Why is it not working? And I felt deeply that the reason it wasn't working was because I had mental health problems that were holding me back. Like I had problems within my head that were holding me back from achieving what I wanted to achieve. And so I reached out, I got help, I went to see a psychiatrist. I still meet with that psychiatrist now, and that's how I got a new psychiatric evaluation, and it was that I'm bipolar. I've been diagnosed in the past, and I felt really stupid when I got the diagnosis, because I felt like, why couldn't I have just accepted it the first time they gave it to me? Because then I could have gotten help then, but back then I wasn't ready to accept this as true. And whether it was or it wasn't, I don't know. I'm still learning a lot about how trauma affects the brain and how there isn't really diagnosis for people with large amounts of trauma. And so that could also be playing into it. I'm not really going to get into that here, other than just to say that I'm reading this amazing book on trauma, and it was recommended by my therapist. I'll show you it real quick. But yeah, that's been very helpful for me to kind of understand like how this all works within my mind and the scientific explanation behind it. And the thing is, I went to meet with the psychiatrist for a while before I agreed to be put on like a mood stabilizer, because I don't like being on medicine that I don't need to be on. And I was kind of worried to become dependent on something that then, like, what if I couldn't get a hold of it? And what if it, I don't know, I just don't like the idea of being on medicine if I don't need to. I feel like then I'm reliant on that, and that kind of makes me feel how I was in my addiction. I was totally dependent on the drugs just to function, and if I have to be totally dependent on medication, even though now it's legally prescribed to function, I don't really know how I feel about that. So I was very wary, and I told her I don't want to be on any medicine. I don't want to take any prescriptions. So she worked with me for months like that. I want to say at least 6 months. I didn't go on any meds. I met with a therapist. I started a therapy called EMDR therapy. I always have to look at that because like I always say it backwards. But I finally agreed to be put on a mood stabilizer. And once I was put on this mood stabilizer, I was put on such a small dose, 25 milligrams. I'll have to check. And this is the name of that medicine. I just call it Lamo. But it's helped me so much that I kind of felt like an idiot for basically getting in my own way. This mood stabilizer has helped me realize I was in such a deep, dark depression, and I didn't even realize how dark it was. So I guess the most disturbing thing is just how comfortable I was being in that dark of a depression for so long. And I wonder if it's because wasn't as uncomfortable as my drug addiction. So I've always had like a really high threshold for pain and uncomfortable situations. And so I kind of got in my own way with getting help because I just kept kind of like pushing through it. Like, yeah, I was low on energy and I had to do more workouts and I had to eat really clean just to kind of like make it through. So it was a lot. And then on top of everything else we dealt with in the pandemic, right? And then me and my husband were getting hit with just major home repair after major home repair. It was crazy. Like, I was just thinking, like, did we buy a lemon of a house? And all of this in the midst of like coming out of this really deep depression before I never felt like I had the energy to do any of this stuff or tackle it. Paperwork felt overwhelming. I mean, it still does, but at this point I'm able to actually do it. I'm filing my paperwork. I'm organizing. I'm like decluttering. I'm learning that I had during my depression just started like over shopping to feel that, I guess, just to boost myself up instead of like taking drugs or overeating. I sort of started transitioning to over shopping. And I feel like that's something that is with addictive personality. I always have to kind of keep an eye out. I'm doing good with this. I'm doing good with that. You know, like eating, working out, whatever it is, not using drugs, staying sober. But then like there's a leak over here somewhere that I'm not noticing. Oh, like I'm compulsively over shopping, buying fabric and craft supplies that I don't even have enough hours in the day that I could ever use them all. So sort of like that. And when I realized I'm coming out of my depression, I'm noticing all this. So it was kind of completely overwhelming just seeing all the stuff that I had acquired from 2020 that it was just like, it kind of made me sick to my stomach when I started to realize all this stuff that in my depression I was sort of blinded to in a way. So that's been hard. So some goods come out of it. Like I've discovered the love of decluttering and how that's helping me. And then my business name is called Goody Stash. And it's kind of funny because I just named it that. My husband came up with the name and I just liked it and it stuck. And it's like, I like the idea of a stash, and Goody kind of puts a little positive spin on a stash. It's just like, I don't know, it just kind of felt like a slang term for a good stash. And so the name I loved, and I didn't know what I was going to sell when I had that name. And I basically sold clothing and accessories for a really long time. Modern, and then I fell into vintage, and I like fell in love with vintage, and I still love vintage. But now it's transitioning into, I have to sell off a lot of this stuff I've collected, and the vast majority of it is craft supplies, fabric, sewing notions, stuff like this. And it just happens that crafters and sewers call their excess a stash. So I'm de-stashing my stash and selling it under Goody Stash, my Poshmark and eBay. And so, yeah, I just think that's kind of cool. And I learned from Clutterbug on YouTube, like watching all her videos to learn more about these sorts of things that I suck at, like organizing and stuff, is that there's two types of crafters. There's crafters who love to craft and they craft a lot. And then there's crafters and who love to shop and they craft a little. And I came to understand and accept that I am the second one. I love to shop, but I don't have that much time to craft. So I craft, but I craft far less than I shop for crafting supplies. So if I could transition into selling some of this stuff off and then build that out as like something I do, is I shop for the cool like vintage and modern and the fabrics and the stuff, the crafting supplies, and then sell that also. I just think that'd be really cool. So I'm kind of experimenting with that and so far loving it. I'm back home now, so sorry for the bad sound on this video. Okay, Bella wanted to say hi. Yes, we love you, girl. Yes, we love you. Well, I think the last thing I'll touch on for this video is the EMDR therapy. So when I first heard about EMDR, all I knew was a quick like Google search, which basically said they're doing like this, and it sounded like they're trying to put you in a trance and hypnotize you, and it just, I don't know, it just sounded like complete bullshit, and I didn't want any part of it. I told my therapist, absolutely not. I don't need that. Regular therapy is good for me. So the book taught me more about the therapy. So then I was basically like, okay, I have nothing to lose. It's helping veterans. It's like they've tested it, and it's saying that it's more effective than talk therapy for people like me with trauma. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, there's a reason that I can't heal through some of these traumas is because the fine print on these contracts for therapy, if you ever read them, and I do because I want to know what I'm getting into, if you mention certain things, they have to get the police involved. And so naturally, a lot of our traumas are things that would cross those thresholds that we couldn't mention in talk therapy, that we wouldn't feel like we could divulge without, in my case, who knows? I mean, the thing about the other therapy is I'm not that great at talking in therapy to begin with as it is. And then to always be having to think like, oh yeah, I can't say that, I can't say that, I can't say that. And that's also how I have to be on YouTube. And that is difficult. It's like, in a way, I'm always overthinking things. But the thing about this new therapy is it's like it transports me back. And I'm doing it all digitally. So I did not think it was going to be effective whatsoever. And I'm not doing this kind. She's doing a kind with me where she like plays this background noise, and then I transfer through my mind. It like picks what traumas I go to, where I end up, and I revisit the traumas. So that's important to note. Like, you have to revisit the traumas and re-experience them all over again, which is very painful and it's very difficult. And I always feel like complete shit when I get out of my sessions. So I don't want to say this like, oh yeah, this is a great therapy, everybody should do it. I think you have to know yourself and like know if you can handle even trying to do this. So I'm doing it 8 years into my sobriety, and some of these traumas were still affecting me on a daily basis, just kind of like hijacking my brain, or it felt like I was being assaulted by my past. And it was aggravating. I'm thinking I'm 8 years clean, yet some of this stuff from 10, 12 years ago is still getting to me on a daily basis and holding me back. And it's probably the reason that I can only go so far with my goals and what I want to do with my business, because I have this like mental block that I can't seem to break past. And so for the first time, I'm doing this therapy, and for the first time, I actually feel like hopeful that it's helping. It feels like every time when I come out, I feel like complete shit. But then a day goes by, 2 days goes by, and then all of a sudden I start to feel the benefits of being in the therapy and realizing that I actually think it's actually really helping me. It's doing something in my brain to where then after a few days, it feels there's this distance between me and the trauma. And yes, I have flashbacks. Yes, I have triggers, but something is helping here, and I can't put my finger on it, but that's been so beneficial for me, and probably the best thing that I've done for myself since leaving YouTube. All right. I will see you guys hopefully sooner than later. Say bye, Bella.